For Boeing, the new year began with a blowout.
I hear this boom. I look to my left, and part of the plane is gone.
At 16,000 feet, a door panel on Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 disappeared, leaving a gaping hole.
Twilight in Alaska, or Seattle, Alaska. 1282, we just depressurized. We're declaring emergency. We need to descend down to 10,000.
Looking at the flight attendants' faces, it was clear to me this wasn't going to go well.
The 737 MAX 9 depressurized. Oxygen masks dropped, and passengers feared the worst.
Yes, we are emergency. We are depressurized. We do need to return back to. We have 177 passengers. Fuel is 18.8.
So I quickly realized I need to pivot and start messaging to people to say goodbye.
No one was sitting next to the panel, but a young man 2 seats over had his shirt sucked out the opening.
The heavy cockpit door blows open. The pilots said that their headsets were ripped off. There's a checklist up here. This thing gets blown out the door. The cockpit is filled with noise, and there's all kinds of debris blowing out of the cockpit. But now we're down to...
My eyes are glued to that opening, and I'm just wondering what's going to happen next. I'm not prepared for this. I wasn't prepared to die on this flight.
Alaska 1282, Portland Tower, wind 160 at 11, runway 28 left, clear connect.
The plane landed, no one was critically hurt. But for Boeing, its reputation was questioned once again, 5 years after its worst crisis ever. We were on the scene back then.
5 years ago, we went to Ethiopia, where ET-302 dove into the ground, and among the victims, 18 Canadians. In the aftermath, Boeing promised to change the corporate culture, to fix the planes and restore trust. But has it? 5 years later, is Boeing any safer? So here we are, a familiar place for you.
Just a little bit.
Dennis Tager flies Boeing 737s for American Airlines.
Oxygen switch on.
In a simulator, he shows us how the Alaskan Airlines pilots may have reacted.
You don't know what happened. Did someone have a bomb back there? Did the piece that blew off the airplane hit another part of the airplane? This is happening in seconds.
And had the plane been higher, at cruising altitude, the situation would have been far worse.
When that door blows open, we're not talking about shirts just being ripped off from just near the door. It's a massive suction that comes out of the airplane, and who knows what could have gotten sucked out of that airplane, including people. When the door blew off the Alaska flight, once again, the doors blew off Boeing. How in the world could this happen?
We had the same question after covering the 2 MAX 8 crashes 5 years ago. In 2018, it was a Lion Air flight that dove into the sea. Just 5 months later, the Ethiopian Airlines flight plunged into the ground. 2 catastrophic crashes, both 737 MAX 8 aircraft, killed 346 people. Ever since, the U.S.'s Federal Aviation Authority has been monitoring the 737 MAX production, a colossal moneymaker for Boeing, MAX aircraft flown all over the world. In February, the FAA published a scathing report on Boeing's safety culture, even before the Alaska Airlines blowout.
The events of January 5th, it really created 2 issues for us. One, what's wrong with this airplane? But 2, what's going on with the production at Boeing.
The FAA sent inspectors onto Boeing's assembly line and ordered it to slow down the production of new 737 MAX planes, while investigators pieced together how a door panel could drop from the sky, how 4 bolts were missing on the door plug, how the 737 MAX 9 flew for 2 months before the panel ripped off. Passengers have already launched lawsuits as Boeing's CEO tries to blunt criticism.
We feel safe airplanes, our people do. We have confidence in the safety of our airplanes, and that's what all of this is about. And we fully understand the gravity.
When you heard about the Alaska Airlines problem, what was your first thought?
Shock. And to have this happen on a brand new airplane, 10 weeks old, was a shock to me.
We asked John Gradek, an aviation management professor at McGill University, about Boeing's newest crisis. What would you say was the reputational damage for Boeing and the MAX aircrafts?
It is a huge blow to Boeing. Boeing has a mindset of operational and financial performance, that they are very much focused today on return to their shareholders. They're focused on the economics of building an airplane. And the latest Alaska Airlines incident still has a lot of people asking, has Boeing fixed itself? And the answer is probably no.
Paul, would you like me to hold one? Yeah, sure.
For the families who lost loved ones in those catastrophic crashes years ago, the latest problems with Boeing have only triggered new emotion. Ever since Boeing's 2 catastrophic crashes, the airline giant has been under intense scrutiny, with a lot to fix, not the least of all, its reputation.
So there were no survivors.
Ethiopian Air Flight 302 took off from Addis Ababa on March 10, 2019, and crashed 6 minutes later. Among the Canadian passengers headed to Kenya was Paul Njoroge's family, his wife, his kids, and his mother-in-law. All died.
I booked the flights for them. They must have cried out there, Daddy. So it breaks my heart.
The pilots had struggled to control the plane, which climbed and pitched under a new software system called MCAS before diving into the ground. Ultimately, the MAX 8 aircraft were grounded for well over a year. Since it's like this all over the world, the entire fleet is grounded and no date set. Chris Moore's daughter, Danielle, died on that Ethiopian Airlines flight. She was 24 years old, from Scarborough, Ontario, headed to Kenya for an environmental conference.
Cradle me, I'll cradle you, I'll win your heart with a woo.
We lost a beautiful person 5 years ago.
His grief and anger was triggered again with the Alaska Airlines blowout.
Yeah, I was thinking about the day that my wife received the call, and she screamed out, Danielle's dead.
Guilty. I feel guilty.
5 years ago, we spoke with Chris and his wife Clarisse after Danielle died.
Every morning, every night is always a struggle. And as what Chris said, it's the new norm, but I don't like the new norm. I want my old norm. Yeah.
Since then, almost daily, Chris has been researching Boeing and aviation safety.
What is that 6 minutes?
This is part of my new life now, this tragedy, this grief, and I need to engage myself in bringing about some justice and ensuring that the aviation industry can take a more positive approach in treating people with dignity and ensuring their safety. The individuals, the flyers, have been ignored through this whole process. It's all about the money.
From 2019 to now, he's been pursuing justice for his daughter's death. Part of a group of families that's dogged Boeing in court and on Capitol Hill in Washington.
Trying to make as much money as possible.
He and Clarisse watched as Boeing's former CEO, Dennis Muhlenberg, testified before a congressional committee, promising to improve safety then.
On behalf of myself and the Boeing Company, we are sorry, deeply and truly sorry.
Cold comfort for the families who'd lost so much. Boeing finally admitted it installed the MCAS control system on the MAX 8 without training pilots and without revealing it to them or the FAA, the Federal Aviation Authority. At the time, the Department of Justice said Boeing's employees chose the path of profit over candor, by concealing material information from the FAA. In 2021, Boeing agreed to pay a $2.5 billion fraud settlement, with $500 million going to the families. Boeing avoided a criminal charge by striking an agreement with the Department of Justice to defer prosecution if it could maintain safety compliance for 3 years. The door plug on Alaska Airlines blew out 2 days before that agreement expired. The Justice Department now must decide, in light of the Alaska Airlines incident, what it will do.
How are you? Hey, everybody.
9 families are still pressing for criminal charges. They meet virtually nearly every week.
Nobody is happy with the way Boeing has been handled with kid gloves throughout this tragedy. We are still reeling from the grief from that crash.
Boeing did agree to pay money to the families and to other entities. Why isn't that enough?
Money is the last thing on my mind in terms of justice. Justice is about holding somebody accountable. 346 people died, and no one has been held to account.
We, the Boeing company, are under a tremendous amount of scrutiny, and what I will say is...
Following the Alaska Airline blowout, Boeing's 737 program took a day-long break to focus on quality.
The most powerful tool we have is our people.
A month later, Ed Clark, the 737 executive, was ousted from Boeing. But the damage to the company is adding up, says the pilot, Dennis Tager, who also speaks on behalf of the American Airlines Pilots Union.
Yeah, we've got a problem here. When Boeing management takes an amazing company, which was built on engineering and a moral and principled obligation to keep people safe no matter what, was replaced by managers who were studying the spreadsheet, bad things happen.
You still fly Boeing?
Yes, I do.
You fly the MAX?
I do. Just flew it last week.
No concerns about safety?
When I fly the MAX, my alert status is on high. It just is.
Would I get on a MAX airplane today? The answer is yes. I would get on a MAX airplane because I know it's gone through the looking glass, it's gone through the microscope.
But it's cost deeply. 346 lives lost, and Boeing now under new scrutiny.
Chris, do you think that Boeing is any safer today than 5 years ago?
I think they're slightly safer because they have the Department of Justice looking over their shoulder.
Do you still fly?
Nope, don't fly at all.
Not at all?
No, I've basically taken myself out of that. I will not support the industry that way. Hey, pumpkin.
The memories of Danielle, too fresh. He refuses to back down. He's simply lost too much. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Toronto.